You're listening to the Horseshoe Guys with Josh Carney and Jake Arthur. Your quest to find the most in-depth Indianapolis Colts podcast has triumphantly reached its terminus. Be sure to join Colts Nation's deep divers at horseshoehuddle.com, part of the Sports Illustrated Digital Network.
Hey guys, and welcome in to the Horseshoe Huddle on Sports Illustrated podcast. I am the deputy editor of Horseshoe Huddle on Sports Illustrated, Josh Carney, joined by our content intern and a rising star in the industry, Andrew Moore. Andrew, how you doing, buddy?
Not too bad, man. It's great to be back. I enjoyed our time last time on the show here, and I'm excited to – now we're talking about actual football. We've got a game to talk about, so it's pretty exciting.
That's the great thing. We have actual football to talk about. No more speculating on what a lineup could look like. None of that. None of the ridiculous offseason fodder. We have actual football to talk about. Though it is preseason, it's still football.
Right.
So that's the great thing. And this podcast, we are coming to you on a Monday night, more than 24 hours after a Colts win. So 23-0 in a Super Bowl championship is still on the table, Andrew. So yes, the Colts beat the Carolina Panthers Sunday at Lucas Oil Stadium, 21-18. Quite the preseason-like result there in terms of the scoreline. But Andrew, you were in the stadium on Sunday. What did you see overall? Just give me your 30,000-foot view kind of before we get into the game here.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was definitely different from last year, only having about 12,000 people in the stands last year. I would say Lucas Oil Stadium was probably about half full for a preseason game. That's pretty good. And late in the game, I was kind of surprised how many people actually stuck around, because usually people leave around halftime to the third quarter. But people stuck around, and they were really excited about this team. There was just an energy in the building. The crowd was a big part of those 3 false starts right in a row for the Carolina Panthers there in the fourth quarter. So number one, it was just great to see the fans back there, and I fully expect week 1 Lucas Oil Stadium to be just absolutely packed with rabid fans ready to go. Now, as far as the game's concerned, there was a lot to like, especially, I mean, we're going to talk about probably the quarterback position, the wide receivers that we saw, but for seeing the first live game action of the 2021 Colts, I think you have a lot to be excited about, because there's a lot of young guys on this team, a lot of unproven talent on this team that really are getting their first experience in the NFL. So it was a good foundation for those guys to build upon. There's definitely some guys that stood out in the game yesterday, and I think they really made a case for either being on this roster come week 1, or at least fighting for a practice squad spot to start the season. So there's a lot to be excited about if you're a Colts fan.
I want to ask you from the fans' perspective. Obviously, COVID last year threw everything, up in the air in terms of viewing sporting events live. You've been at training camp. You've interacted with fans, in the last few months. But being back in that stadium as a season ticket holder in your normal seat, what was that like for you, and what was the atmosphere like? I mean, you mentioned there was a palpable energy in the stadium. It played a role in some false starts, but just looking around, interacting with your fellow Colts fan, what was that like for you yesterday?
It was a sense of normalcy back in that football stadium. And I think that's something that as football fans, we all really need, because while last year the crowd did its best to be there and help the team, it's 12,000 people is just not 63,000 people. You can't replicate that. Even in a huge game against like the Green Bay Packers last year, where it got considerably loud and you could feel that energy just wasn't the same. Right. But you can start to feel that's coming back. That people are excited to be back at football games. People are excited to root for this team because they see a lot of potential in this team. I mean, obviously the buzz around Carson Wentz. We've got guys, the building blocks of Darius Leonard and Braden Smith signed to long-term deals, and other guys we're excited about, like Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman, to take that next step. This team just has so many interesting storylines around it, and I think the fans are just itching to be really a part of that. That's the thing I've noticed as being at these Colts games, and since I became a season ticket holder, is a lot of the fans that are season ticket holders, they really feel like they're a part of this team, and they're very, very invested in this team. And I think that's what makes the Colts fans so great, is because they are so invested and they are so passionate about their team, and they want them to do well. I mean, you hear people talking about Eason and Ellinger all around the stadium. You hear people talking about Michael Strawn. I mean, how many fan bases are talking about a 7th round wide receiver? So it was just that energy that it brings, and obviously the players feed off that, and that helps not only the defense, which loves it loud, but the offense really relishes in that as well.
Yeah. So let's dive into it here. Obviously, the Colts and Panthers, I think, are absolutely sick of each other at this point. Multiple practices in Westfield prior to Sunday's preseason opener. Our Jake Arthur was at practice for a few days there. A lot of fights, not surprising, especially when you're banging your head into the same guy over and over and over again in 90-plus degree weather. But they get on the field for a game on Sunday, and it wasn't pretty early on for the Colts. A couple of broken plays went the Panthers' way, and down 15-3 right before the half, Jacob Eason gets his shot at a 2-minute drive. This is what we've wanted to see. This is what the coaching staff has wanted to see. Eason leads him right down the field. Jordan Wilkins scores from 3 yards out on the ground. It's 15-10. Unfortunately, they let the Panthers go right back down the field, but the Panthers did miss a field goal there before the half. And then in the second half, for me at least, it was Sam Ehlinger time. And Sam did very well. He did throw the interception, but obviously the Colts came out on top, largely due to the second half performance, 21-18, as we mentioned at the top of the show. Coming out of this game, all the talk is about the quarterback performance. We have a question already from Matthew Bennington. Thoughts on the quarterback performances? I want to take this as an opportunity here, Andrew, to get into a piece that you did this afternoon, Colts risers and fallers versus the Panthers. The first one you have as risers, Jacob Eason and Sam Ehlinger. Walk us through what you saw with the quarterback performance, and where are you at with these two heading into the second preseason game?
I thought overall the quarterback performance was pretty solid. I mean, it probably went as well as we could have expected for these guys. And Jacob Eason, we got to remember, he hasn't had a live NFL snap yet. So both of these guys had their first live NFL game action yesterday. And considering how up and down things have been in practice, they played pretty well. I mean, Jacob Eason goes 15 of 21 for 183 yards. And I think we were talking about this during the game. Jacob Eason was definitely at his best yesterday when he was making quick, decisive decisions and he could just let the ball rip. When he had to sit back there and kind of go through his different reads and really take his time, being hesitant, it kind of reminded me of Jacoby Brissett, honestly. Mm-hmm. And then that's when he started to struggle. He held onto the ball too long. He was sacked 3 times. Some of that was on him. Some of that was on the offensive line. Right. But I think overall, when you're talking about that 2-minute drill specifically, Jacob Eason had phenomenal command of the offense there. He stayed very calm in the pocket. He delivered that strike to Michael Strawn. Then he delivers another quick pass to Courtney Davis, and then he also relies on Jordan Wilkins. And if you watch the Colts the past few years, Jordan Wilkins isn't a starter at running back, but you feel good when Jordan Wilkins is in the game because he's the guy that'll just pick up 5 yards at a time and continue to move the chains. Yeah. So I think Jacob Eason overall did pretty well. I mean, the thing that I was most impressed with was that command of the offense and then his touch on those deep balls to Paris Campbell, to Michael Strawn. That's something that we really haven't seen from Jacob Eason. He does still need to work on his pocket presence, and I think just because he's a young quarterback, that's going to come with time. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I think you feel good about where Jacob Eason is right now. And then Sam Ehlinger, I mean, talk about a way to bounce back. I mean, his first drive, he throws that. It was a bad pass, real bad pass behind Kylan Granson, gets intercepted. The kid doesn't quit. I mean, he said that he just needed to calm down. He had some nerves. He felt like he was aiming the ball. And once he settled in, then you saw what the Colts have seen in training camp. He delivered strikes down the field, a beautiful deep ball to Tariq Black, and then another beautifully paced ball to Tyler Vaughns in the red zone. He was able to pick up multiple first downs with his legs. That mobility factor is huge. And you saw why the Colts say that Sam Ehlinger has that it factor, because he was in control the whole second half and was able to lead the Colts on a game-winning drive to set up that field goal. So overall, I think both quarterbacks can build on that performance, and I think it's a good start for where they're at as they continue to go down the road here towards week 1.
Yeah, and I was obviously not at the stadium Sunday. I did watch the game on NFL Network. The thing that irritated me in the pregame stuff was Adam Rank of NFL Network continued to try to make the point that because the Colts drafted Sam Ehlinger, it's an indictment of how they feel about Jacob Eason. And, that is just so inaccurate. I don't even know where to really start with it. But again, I was really encouraged seeing what I saw from the quarterbacks. Eason, I think that's his first game action since January of 2019, maybe December of 2018, depending on when the bowl game was at Washington. He looked timid at times, but Frank Reich and Marcus Brady did a great job scheming up some easy throws for him early on to Desmond Pittman, settling him in. He still lacks some of that touch and understanding of when to pull out the howitzer and when to just not. He struggled a couple times with some crossing routes to Michael Strawn. The play that stood out to me, though, wasn't the deep balls to Michael Strawn. It was the play action incompletion to Kylan Granson over the middle. We saw what Granson can be in this system on those crossing routes, beating a safety. Eason put it right on the money. Granson just couldn't finish the play, and it rolled out of bounds. Initially was rolled a fumble, but upon review was an incomplete pass. But it was perfect. I mean, Eason sold play action well, and then he settled in, stepped up in the pocket, and fired a frozen rope right on the money to Granson. That's what I wanted to see. I know he has a big arm. I know he can throw it 100 miles an hour. I know he can throw it 70 yards. I wanted to see that play action where he takes his eyes away from the defense, has to reset, understand what's happening in the pocket, step up and throw and hit a guy in stride. And it was a fantastic rep. And then obviously the 2-minute drill, he starts off fast with the 32-yard completion to Michael Strawn. And then from there, it was Granson. And then I think there was the pass interference, it was the personal foul on the Courtney Davis catch.
Mm-hmm.
So Eason was in command. He never looked like the moment was too big on that drive. And I come away really impressed, and I want to see more from Jacob Eason. But then we get to the second half, and I love Sam Ehlinger. Like he was just the quintessential college quarterback. I love what he can do with his feet. He is limited in terms of arm strength. Frank Reich did say that he thought after the game the interception may have been a miscommunication and a wrong route from Granson. We'll wait to see what Reich says in his next media availability. But yeah, you mentioned like a rookie quarterback throws an interception on his first drive in the NFL. Didn't faze him. He bounced back. He relied on his legs when he needed to pick up first downs, move the chains. He made big-time throws. He hit his college teammate in Tariq Black. I don't know how anyone could have watched this game, just specifically the quarterbacks for the Colts, and said, we're in trouble here. I mean, I'm not saying, plan the parade, any of that, or, a division title. I think they will be just fine if Carson Wentz misses games. Now, do I think they're going to beat the Seahawks or the Rams to open the season if Wentz missed? No. That would be tough if Phillip Rivers were still in town. But I'm intrigued, and I feel really good about what I saw from the quarterbacks, and I think we're in lockstep. Just it feels good,
Yeah, absolutely, and I think you're right in that if we're seeing this in their first live action, I mean, Eason and Ellinger are just going to get better the more reps they take. And I think that's what Frank Reich has been trying to communicate all along is that these guys are still young, and young quarterbacks are going to make mistakes. That's Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning made mistakes. So to expect these guys to come out and be perfect, that's irrational. So these guys are going to make mistakes. Pocket presence for a young quarterback like Jacob Eason, that comes with reps. Those throws that Sam Ellinger made that got picked off or were ill-advised, that comes with reps. They're things that can be corrected. When you watch those two quarterbacks yesterday, nothing jumps out on the tape that says, ooh, this is really bad, or this can't be corrected. Everything that they did yesterday can be corrected. So that's kind of what I meant when I say they built that foundation. Now they need to continue to build upon that. We don't want them to stay at this same level because they were playing against 2s and 3s. So they need to kind of up that performance and be able to play that way against the number one defenses that they're going to be up against if Carson Wentz does miss some time in the regular season. But I think you can be encouraged if you're Frank Reich and this Colts team that these guys, the moment's not too big for them. No. Frank Reich even said that when they came over to the sideline, he was talking to him. Neither one of them were frazzled. They were able to have a good grasp of the offense, and they took command of it. So I think that's definitely a positive sign, and we'll see how they play up against Minnesota next week, where the roles will kind of be flipped. Ellinger's going to start and play the half. Jacob Eason will come in, relieve him, and we'll see how they stack up next week.
Well, and I think too, in past months, you and I have talked offline. Jake Arthur, Zach Hicks have all talked. Ellinger shouldn't be frazzled by the moment. He has 46 career collegiate starts at a premier program. Like, he's seen it all. He's done it all. Granted, it is the NFL, but I don't think he's going to see anything right now that should overwhelm him. Whereas Eason, a limited number of starts in college after leaving Georgia for Washington. And then he sat an entire year, like no preseason last year, took reps strictly in practice, and even those reps were limited as the number 3, and never saw a single snap in game action for the NFL. So I'm glad to see Eason wasn't overwhelmed. I never was concerned with Ellinger, and I think you and I are the same way there. What I am concerned with is your faller from the game, the offensive tackles. I mean, granted, Braden Smith did not play Sunday. Eric Fisher will probably begin the season on the PUP list and will miss the first 6 weeks, I'm assuming. But Julian Davenport, Sam Tevi, and Will Holden were horrendous. Horrendous on Sunday. I mean, Tevi got pushed around in the run game and in pass protection by backup defensive ends in Carolina. Julian Davenport, if he wasn't missing an assignment, guys were blowing right past him and getting into the lap of Eason. And then Will Holden, he had some good reps last season, but man, he gets beat cleanly for a strip sack deep in Colts territory. Granted, Eason has to have better command of the pocket there and feel for pressure, but I'm concerned. I am very concerned. And granted, again, this is the first real action of training camp in the preseason for these guys, but goodness gracious, Andrew. Are we in trouble here? I mean,
it's a definite concern because Eric Fisher, there's no around. There's no if he's going to play week 1. Eric Fisher is going to be out for a few weeks entering the season. And it's going to be one of these 3 that's protecting Carson Wentz or Jacob Eason, Sam Ellinger, whoever it is, going to be protecting that blind side. And Quentin Nelson is while he's injured and maybe on track to play week 1, we'll see, he can only do so much to help out that left tackle position. Julian Davenport got the start yesterday, and you're right. He just seemed lost out there. Now, Julian hasn't been on the field as much as the other guys because he started the training camp on the COVID-19 list, but he just looked very, very lost out there. Sam Tevi, whether he was playing right tackle or left tackle yesterday, he just looked outmanned, and we've been seeing that every single day in practice. Jake has reported over and over how whether it's Kwity Paye, Kamoko Toure, Ben Bandigoot, they've been tossing him around like a rag doll, honestly. And we don't see that strength that he needs to plant. And Will Holden, he was actually my favorite to take the starting spot over Sam Tevi, because in that limited action against the Pittsburgh Steelers, while he didn't play great, I thought he played well enough that he could be somebody that could fill in a pinch. And I just wasn't impressed with Sam Tevi's tape. And Will Holden, like you said, gave up the strip sack. He had the holding call that stalled the drive. So really none of those guys performed. And I think you have to be a little bit concerned if you're the Indianapolis Colts in the fact that one of the most important positions on the offensive line, you don't have a firm answer for it until Eric Fisher gets back. And we thought that Sam Tevi would be a respectable swing tackle. We thought Will Holden, the holdover for last year, would be able to handle it. And so far they haven't shown that. And they've got to figure that out quick. Otherwise, that's going to be a huge concern. And obviously, the Colts can do stuff to help that out by putting Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox in there, two great blocking tight ends to help chip and help them out. Quentin Nelson comes back. That's obviously going to be a plus for that left side. Ryan Kelly is supposed to be coming back. So they're getting guys back on that side, and they can do things to help out that position. But there are going to be times where that left tackle position is expected to go one-on-one and hold up. And as of right now, I'm not very confident that Will Holden or Sam Tevi or Julian Davenport, for that matter, who I put a distant third in that competition, are able to do that.
Yeah, I think this is a position that when it comes to cut down to that 53-man roster, I think that Chris Ballard is going to go outside the organization to try and find a veteran, maybe a veteran surprise cut or flip a late round pick, because this can't continue. D-line videos on Twitter posted the clip from practice the other day of Tevi against, I believe it was Kamoko Toure. Mm-hmm. And Toure's not a big power guy. He's more finesse, speed around the corner. Toure put Tevi on his butt just with a long arm. And that, it's great to see from Toure. Like, all right, we may have something there at defensive end. Sam Tevi is not it. And I am guilty of pushing this all offseason. The Colts will be fine. He's a veteran with more than 2,500 career snaps. Like, they saw something. It'll be okay. It's not going to be okay, Andrew. Like, I'm concerned big time. Julian Davenport's not making this team, period. Will Holden will probably make it, but he is clearly overmatched. And as our friend Zach Hicks has said in multiple Slack messages, he's terrible. And I think it's accurate. The Colts and this fan base has to hope that Eric Fisher, when he comes back, is Pro Bowl caliber Eric Fisher. Because if not, I don't know what they're going to do. You can scheme up your offense and your pass protection to hide a left tackle, but you don't want to be doing it every single time you drop back to pass. And I'm worried. But again, it's the first week of preseason. A lot of starters were missing. Obviously, Quentin Nelson sat out. Ryan Kelly sat out. Braden Smith sat out. Mark Lewinsky sat out. So not a great read overall on the starting offensive line, but yeah, the tackles were turnstiles, and you never want to say that about bookend tackles in a game. So, Did you want to add something there?
I think that's going to be a big component of it. Is Frank Reich? It's going to be a lot on his shoulders to kind of hide that left tackle position. And we also got to remember Carson Wentz we're still trying to get his confidence back. He was sacked 50 times in an Eagles uniform last year in 12 games. He's not going to be very happy, and it's not going to bode well for his confidence if he comes to this new team and immediately starts getting pressure and getting sacks. So I would expect if once Wentz returns, or once we get to the regular season, when we're facing those defensive fronts like a Seattle who blitzes an incredibly high amount, when we're facing up the Los Angeles Rams with Aaron Donald and Leonard Floyd and that pass rush, there's these teams are going to be coming after whoever is playing quarterback for the Colts at that time. And quick passes, some RPOs, which I saw a couple RPOs when Eason was in the game yesterday that really got me excited, because I think that can be a big part of this offense, whether it is Wentz, Eason, or Ellinger. All three of them can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be huge as far as hiding that left tackle. Then, like I said, Jack Doyle, Mo Cox chipping and helping out there. But it's going to be interesting to see, and it's probably the outside of quarterback, the number one position I'm watching moving forward here in preseason and the rest of training camp to see how those guys continue to develop and if we are going to have this high level of concern going into week one.
Here's what I don't want to do. I don't want to get to week 6 or 7. Eric Fisher comes back, has a couple of weeks, and by week 10, all we're talking about is, oh, Chris Ballard really missed on this. He should have drafted a tackle. I don't want to do that. And I don't think that's going to happen. But the off chance that Fisher is never the same, the depth is horrendous, that I'm afraid that if that's the worst case scenario, that's all we're going to hear about is Ballard missed the mark by, going all in on a franchise quarterback in Carson Wentz, and he didn't address the most important position outside of quarterback. So it's terrifying. And our good friend and huge supporter of the show, Kyle Stewart, does check in here. Legitimately concerning. Kyle, I think everyone here at Sports Illustrated and Horseshoe Huddle is with you. I wish you could have been a part of the Slack content channel yesterday. It was a nightmare. But I want to go back to winners here, Andrew. You have 2 young receivers that really turned heads yesterday. One continues a good trend, and another one kind of woke people up. 2 winners that you have, wide receiver Mike Strawn and wide receiver Tarek Black, who way back in April or May, I did a story that said Bleacher Report named Tarek Black the Colts sleeper UDFA. He sure looked like a sleeper yesterday.
Yeah, he did. And the thing that's working against Black is this Colts wide receiver group is just so stout. I mean, you've got 4 guys that are guaranteed to make the roster in T.Y. Hilton, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, and Zach Pascal. And then with Mike Strawn and him coming along, I mean, who would have thought that a 7th-round pick would get this much noise in training camp? And we always said, like, okay, well, he's doing it in practice, got to show it on the field. Well, he certainly showed it yesterday. I mean, this guy is a big 6'5", 225-pound receiver. And Chris Ballard told us he's not as raw as people think, and he's proven to be right once again. He went out there and he used his body to make good route decisions on slants, on those outs. He was very acrobatic in the air, going up and catching those jump balls. We saw it yesterday in the game, and we've seen it in training camp. I mean, in one of those joint practices, Mike Strawn was double covered, and Ellinger still zipped the ball right to him, and he came down with it. So Mike Strawn is going to be a problem. And I think he went from a fringe roster spot for me fighting with Desmond Patman to, as of right now, pretty much locking up that wide receiver 5 spot. So, and then when you talk about Tarek Black, I think if you're fighting for that number 6 wide receiver spot, for me, and I think what the Colts really look at is their ability on special teams. So that gives it down to guys like Ashton Dulin, who, although he's been out with a hamstring injury, he's one of the Colts' best special teams players, and he's a fantastic gunner. You talk about DeMichael Harris, another gadget guy who can play special teams in that gunner spot. So while Tarek Black, he showed great promise yesterday in those deep routes. He caught a couple slants. So he was a very proficient route runner from what I saw. And I think what the Colts might do is, if they can, try to stash him on the practice squad, because if we know the Colts, we know that one of the wide receivers is going to get injured throughout the year. And I think Black could be a guy that if you stick on the practice squad and protect him, Desmond Patman, those are 2 guys that you could see get on the active roster and really be somebody that can have an impact in the middle of the year if one of the wide receivers goes down. So he had a really good start. It certainly helped that he had some chemistry with Sam Ellinger as they were at Texas together, and that certainly showed on the field as well. But yeah, he impressed me yesterday, and I think that he's well on his way to earning at least a practice squad spot. And if he can show that he's a player on special teams, he might fight with Ashton Dulin and DeMichael Harris for that final spot on the active roster.
Yeah, I think if there's anyone out there listening or watching that has not bought tickets on the Mike Strawn train, you might want to do it here soon. That train is loading up and is ready to leave the station at this point. He looked fantastic yesterday. He looked great all week in the highlights that the Colts were tweeting out, and posting on their website. All reports were he was dominating against the Panthers in practice. I watch him and I see like a young, raw Alshon Jeffrey. And I know that might be a little off because Jeffrey was a more physical receiver. But just the body movement and the ability to win contested catches and just he always seems to be open. I don't know other way to say it. I'm falling in love with this guy. Like he's awesome to watch. And I think he has that wide receiver 5 position locked up. It remains to be seen what he can do on special teams, if anything. But I think that wide receiver 6 job kind of comes down to Desmond Pittman and Ashton Doolin at this point. I do think Tarek Black is a practice squad guy that is protected every week. But we'll see. But regardless of any way you look at it, this wide receiver room is loaded. They didn't need to go out and get a Julio Jones. They just need to just build the depth that they have right now. And if I'm a quarterback on the Colts roster and I look at that receiver depth chart, I'm like, holy smokes, that is fun. So they're not a bunch of big names, but they all produce and fit together really well. And sometimes those tend to be the best receiving cores. So,
right. The sum is greater than the parts per se, because I mean, you got T.Y. Hilton, who I really think can still play. And that's not just me being a Colts fan or a T.Y. Hilton fan. When you just turn on the film, I mean, last year when defenses weren't rolling the coverage to T.Y. Hilton, that's when he started burning them late in the year. And in the beginning of the year, when they were rolling coverage to him, that just opened everything up for everything else. Mm-hmm. Michael Pittman Jr., I think, is going to take the next step. I mean, everybody's talking about it, but when you see him in camp, he's becoming a dog. He's really got that forcefulness to his game, and he's on a mission to really set that standard and be a top wide receiver for the Colts. Paris Campbell's going to be a major impact player in this offense. Frank Reich is so excited about him. Kid just can't stay healthy, and he's been healthy all camp. So if that continues, we're going to see a breakout year for Paris Campbell. And then what can you say about Zach Pascal? The guy does everything, whether he blocks, catches it deep, short, over the middle. He'll do everything for you. So everybody has their role on this team in the wide receiver group. And Mike Strong comes in there and he brings that massive athlete that the Colts aren't lacking. Because, I mean, while Michael Pittman Jr. is a big body wide receiver, Michael Strong is just his athletic ability tops Michael Pittman's, and you can see that on the field. So, and we also got to think too that Mike Strong is still adjusting to the NFL game. I mean, he went to Division II Charleston, so he's still adjusting to the speed of the game, the size of the players that he's going up against, and the more reps that this kid gets, and he could have a future as one of the number 1 or number 2 wide receiver for the Colts at his ceiling if he continues like this. We could be talking about Pittman and Strong with Campbell in the slot. That'd be a pretty formidable wide receiver future for the Indianapolis Colts.
I use Mock Draftable a ton for the spider charts, and I'm just messing around on Strong's right now. His wide receiver top comparison is Hakeem Butler, who was, I think, my number 2 receiver coming out of 2019 out of Iowa State. Obviously, he's changed positions. He's a tight end now. He's added weight. Just for fun, I went to Athlete. His top 3 comparisons. Are you ready for this?
Let's hear it.
Carolina Panthers pass rusher Brian Burns.
Oh, wow.
Dolphins rookie first-round draft pick Jalen Phillips. And number 4 overall pick by Atlanta, Kyle Pitts.
Wow. You can't get more athletic than that. That's an incredible group right there.
You genuinely cannot get more athletic than that. So to have that guy playing receiver and getting him as a 7th rounder, kudos to Chris Ballard and the entire scouting department in Indianapolis. Quite defined. It remains to be seen how he will look against ones. We have to put that caveat in there.
Oh, yeah.
But he cooked Xavier Rhodes in practice all month, pretty much. He did a great job in practice against J.C. Horn. I mean, go look at the separation he created on the out route against J.C. Horn, who was my cornerback 1 in this class. This guy can play, and it doesn't matter where he's from. There's that saying, it doesn't matter where you play, they will find you if you're good. He's good. He's showing it. I want to add one more thing about the offense before we flip to defense. Man, it was great to see Marlon Mack healthy. Looks like he hasn't missed a beat. Looks like that Achilles isn't bothering him. He looked fast. He looked to break runs. He ran with power at the end of runs. fantastic. I love that guy. He has some of the best tape I've seen at running back coming out of South Florida. I'm a huge Marlon Mack fan. It was fantastic to see him healthy. What was it like in the stadium for fans when he got that first carry?
It was pretty electric. I mean, you heard people talking about when we saw that vintage Marlon Mack. I mean, that patience in his running style and that quick burst and him to just run through the hole as soon as it opens. Marlon Mack has that sense, and it's almost like a sixth sense where you don't the hole isn't there, but he knows where it's going to open, and then as soon as he hits it, it's like Moses parting the Red Sea. He just darts right through it, and I think it's really. I think Marlon Mack's presence is just huge in this offense. And I mean, I know we always talk about Jonathan Taylor, and deservedly so. We talk about Nyheim Hines and his versatility, deservedly so. Marlon Mack is the forgotten man a lot of times, but Marlon Mack is going to have a great season, I feel like. And the way that the Colts use their running backs, keeping all three of those guys fresh, it's like pick your poison. Do you constantly try to stop Jonathan Taylor? Okay, well then here comes Marlon Mack, or here comes Nyheim Hines. So their Colts are really going to wear down defenses on the ground, and that's what Frank Reich wants to do, because when you do that, opens up play action game for Carson Wentz to hit T.Y. Hilton, Paris Campbell deep, to give it off to Michael Pittman to let him go for a big run. When you have just so many options in the running back field, and you don't have to run down on one guy, and it keeps all the guys fresh, and it allows you to really preserve that running back group for when it really matters in December and January, where we really see the best running teams have the most success. So Marlon Mack looked great yesterday. I tweeted out that the old Marlon Mack is all the way back. And I think just by splitting up the carries and with the Colts continuing to ride the hot hand, it might not be favorable for fantasy owners drafting the Colts, but the Colts on the field, they're going to see quite a bit of success with that running game.
Yeah. We transitioned from one guy coming back from injury to a couple of guys on the defensive side of the ball that suffered injuries on Sunday. Veteran cornerback TJ Carey went down with a knee injury, had to be helped off the field, but looked like he came out of the blue tent with the trainers. They took his helmet away. He was done for the day, but I think he was walking around the sideline the rest of the afternoon. And then Marvell Tell III went down with a groin injury. I don't think there's any cause for concern there overall, but this defense gave up some big plays yesterday. It is the preseason. Plays will happen, but it was a bit concerning seeing Julian Blackmon and TJ Carey chasing Terrence Marshall Jr. 60-some yards down the field on a broken play where nobody was within 10 yards of the rookie when he caught that pass in space. So what did you see from the defense? And again, caveat, a lot of the ones were sitting for this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that cornerback 3 spot, that other outside corner spot opposite of Xavier Rhodes, it's still wide open. I mean, we saw early in camp, Rock Ya-Sin was the one that was there. Rock Ya-Sin's had an up and down camp, which isn't what we wanted to see. Personally, I would have loved to see Rock Ya-Sin really take over and take charge of that at outside corner spot. He really hasn't done that. When TJ Carey came off of the COVID-19 list, he was the one that kind of assumed that role. And on the Colts unofficial depth chart, he's listed as the starter at outside corner. But then he gives up that huge play, that broken coverage that really a veteran like TJ Carey should never give up. Julian Blackmon had to chase him down. And he goes down. We thought Marvell Tell was going to be a guy that really pushed for that outside starting spot. He really hasn't done anything significant in camp. So that spot's still wide open for the taking. And it's begging for somebody to really step up and take that position by the horns. So you want to see Rock Ya-Sin. I think all Colts fans would love to see Rock Ya-Sin take it because he is a young guy. He is still developing, and then he could be a starter at corner for years to come. But if he doesn't, then that's just another hole that Chris Ballard and this team have to fill. And I think it is cause for concern, but then again, you want to see the more reps against the one. So you want to see that continuity with the starting defense. And I think this week against Minnesota, we're going to see more of the starters play. So we're going to get to see kind of a more dress rehearsal in a sense of how this defense will play, whether it is TJ Carey out there if he's able to come back, whether it's Rock Ya-Sin, even Isaiah Rodgers, who has shown some playmaking ability when he's been there as a corner. I think he's more suited for the nickel than anything else. They've given him shots at outside corner as well. So I think that was my main takeaway from the cornerback position is you want to see someone really take that and step up in that position, because that's a huge position in this defense. And guys and offensive coordinators and quarterbacks are just going to pick on that same side if they don't figure this out. So it's definitely something to watch as we move forward.
I want to move into the front seven now. I thought the pass rush was very good on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Guys like Kemoko Turay, Isaac Rochelle. Hello. Welcome to training camp, sir. Joey Ivy had a sack yesterday. Al-Quadid Muhammad looked good. Our Jake Arthur wrote a piece following the game on Sunday. Colts edge rushers make a bigger impact beyond the box score against Carolina, and it was spot on. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely spot on. Ben Banigou was fantastic. Andrew Brown, our Zach Hicks is going to have a film room on him here either Tuesday or Wednesday. Andrew Brown's get off on Sunday was phenomenal. He was often the first person moving at the snap of the ball. Zach Hicks, go to his Twitter. I think it's at Zach Hicks 2 on Twitter. He has a screenshot where Andrew Brown is already engaged with the guard in front of him, and the ball is not even completely through the center's legs. This guy's get off was fantastic yesterday. I was very encouraged. Going into Sunday, I thought it was pretty clear. Like, I don't think Al-Quadin Muhammad's going to make the roster. Isaac Rochelle he's out. But that's why they play the games. And they both made cases for sticking around. But pleased to see Ben Banigou, show some of that get off and make some plays. Kemoko Turay just wreaked havoc. There were plays where, the left and the right tackle were both terrified and jumping, for a false start in obvious pass rush situations because they just were worried about keeping up with those guys off the edge. What did you see from the pass rush live, and how are you feeling about that group heading into week 2 of the preseason?
There's a lot of promise with this pass rush group. And when I was on last time, we talked about kind of what the potential of this pass rush group could be. And I think we're starting to see that. I'm going to start with Kemoko Turay. I think we're starting to see 2019 Kemoko Turay, because not only is he doing it against the twos and dominating, one of the Colts possible starting left tackles in Sam Tebby. That clip went viral where he had a great rep against Sam Tebby. Yeah. Sam Tebby's not the greatest tackle, but you see the technique that Kemoko Turay used. It was phenomenal.
I'll tell you what, if Turay can bust out a long arm like that against legitimate pass protectors, good luck.
Right. And we've been seeing it in camp too. When they're deploying their sub packages or their third down NASCAR package, you've got Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner, and Tyquan Lewis go inside, and then you have Kemoko Turay on the other outside end. I mean, good luck blocking that. And so I really think that was a plus. And then Ben Banigou, he was a guy that I didn't know was even had a chance to make the roster, because when you're a second-round draft pick and then in your second year you're a healthy scratch for 7 games, it's not a good look. And a lot of that starts in practice. The Colts like to play the guys that practice hard and show it in practice. Well, Ben Banigou has gotten that now, and he worked with DeForest Buckner all off season. Kind of just developing that get off and really honing in his skills as a practice player too. And we've seen that. Jake Arthur, it seems like every single day, is reporting Ben Banigou's getting a sack in training camp. And while he didn't get a sack on Sunday, you saw that burst. You saw him record those pressures. And if you're a pass rusher and if you know how pass rushing works, it's not all measured in sacks. The quarterback hits, the pressures, those all add up. And he was the one that recovered the fumble to end the game yesterday. Yeah. So it's great to see those guys. Andrew Brown, I think right now he could be a shocker. And if he keeps playing like this with Taylor Stallworth still on the mend with that hamstring injury, if he keeps putting together impressive performances like this, especially once the Colts start playing teams where they're going up against starting offensive linemen, Andrew Brown might push for a roster spot and compete with Taylor Stallworth. So it's good to see this young pass rushing group, who we definitely had questions about, start to come into their own and start to have success, not only in practice against their own teammates, but when we see them going up against another team like the Panthers, going up against their offensive line as well.
Yeah, that NASCAR package, I think, has the potential to be like that 2007 New York Giants NASCAR package, where you've got the wily veteran, future Hall of Famer in DeForest Buckner being that Michael Strahan role. I think that team had Justin Tuck, Matthias Kiwanuka. Let me see. I pulled
OCU Manura.
OCU Manura was on that. Yeah, I mean, there is legitimate talent that the Colts have up front. And if they can all click, granted, I'm talking ceiling. I'm not saying right now. But I think if they all hit, it could be like that 2007 Giants line again. And everybody tends to forget that Giants team beat the undefeated Patriots because of that defensive line. It wasn't because of the Tyree catch or the Plexico Burress touchdown. That defensive line got after Tom Brady all night long. And I think in obvious passing situations, if the Colts can turn to a group like that and get pressure with 4, I don't know how this defense is in the top 10 in the NFL. So
these guys are all young too. I mean, DeForest Buckner's the oldest guy along that defensive line. So it's pretty crazy to see how these, I mean, we're starting to get into year 3 and year 4 for guys like Ben Bannigout, Kamoko Toure, Tyquan Lewis. That's when these pass rushers really take off. And then you add in Kwity Paye, who's looked dominant in camp already as a first-round pick. Once Dio Odangbo comes back from his injury, probably won't be the Dio Odangbo that we expect this year. Yeah. But next year, once we see him fully healthy and coming along, I mean, there's a lot of young pass rushers that can make a huge, huge difference for this Indianapolis Colts defense.
We do have a question here on Facebook from Kyle Stewart. So who the heck makes the cut? And can we actually hide any of these guys on the practice squad? Well, Kyle, all 4 of us here at Horseshoe Huddle will have our second version of our 53-man roster prediction coming up here in the next few days. But who the heck makes the cut? That's a great problem to have. Like, it's not, who's going to make the roster? How do we build this depth chart? That's a fantastic problem to have. And I think if you gave every general manager true serum in the NFL, that's the number one problem they'd want to have, is having too many people at a position. I doubt that they're going to be able to stash a veteran on a practice squad. I'm not sure exactly how the COVID rules have changed the practice squad this year. You know, could a guy like Isaac Rochelle be kept on a practice squad just for depth, despite being a 4-year NFL veteran? We'll see. But that's the problem you want to have at positions. And the Colts went from it being a clear, obvious weakness to it could be a strength, depending on how it develops. Injuries, all that. So I do want to move to the linebackers now. Zaire Franklin. I think people know at this point I am very biased towards that man. I covered him in college at Syracuse. He is one of the nicest athletes that I've ever dealt with, and he is just an outstanding leader. He looked so incredibly fast and explosive on the field Sunday in the first half. I'm so excited. I hope he gets the starting job. I hope he runs with it. That guy can flat out play. What did you see from Zaire Franklin in stadium, and where are you at with him?
It definitely was important to see him play in that role, because with the second team defense, Zaire Franklin was the main guy. He was the guy making sure everybody was lined up correctly. And you're right, he was flying all over the field. Zaire Franklin and I think EJ Speed would be the other guy who are fighting for that starting Sam linebacker position. And while right now I would give Zaire Franklin the edge, it's because the Sam linebacker is normally used in those predominantly run situations. And Zaire Franklin is a better run defender, I think, than EJ Speed. EJ Speed is he absolutely does. EJ Speed is a long guy that I think fits more of that will linebacker, the Darius Leonard mold. But I think when you're talking about a run stopper, you want a guy like Zaire Franklin because he's stout, he's a thick guy, and you're exactly right. He runs downhill and just hits you square. right, and he's a great tackler. So I think Zaire Franklin, if he can be that Sam linebacker, as well as continue being a captain and a core special teams player, Zaire Franklin is one of the best special teams players on this Colts team, and he's really that leader of the special teams group. So he's multifaceted in that way. So I think as of right now, you'd have to say Franklin is the leader for that Sam spot, but EJ Speed's had a good camp as well. I don't want to diminish him at all. I think when he's came in for when Darius Leonard was out, I think he played very well in his stead, and I think EJ Speed is pushing for more playing time in the Colts defense as well.
Yeah. Obviously, Franklin's going into the final year of his deal. I think it's a no-brainer. He gets an extension at some point, or at the very least gets a new deal prior to hitting free agency. I genuinely love that guy, and I'm rooting for him to get an opportunity to be a starter in the NFL on a good defense. And I think he is taking the opportunity and running with it. And that hit yesterday. I mean, I jumped out of my seat at home because I just, like I said, I'm definitely biased towards that guy. I mean, I could certainly step back and, say good and bad things about him, but knowing what I know from that locker room at Syracuse and, just the person he was on campus, I'm rooting for him. So that's going to do it from our game coverage. Now we're going to move into just a quick prediction piece ahead of, as we teased earlier, we will have our next 53-man roster prediction dropping here in the next few days. The Colts have to cut down from 90 to 85 by 4 p.m. Tuesday. Now, I don't like the idea of cutting from 90 to 85 because, quite frankly, what's the point? Like, why don't you just carry the extra 5 until final cutdown day? Alas, that's how the NFL schedule broke out. But we're going to take our shot here in the next, 5-10 minutes and predict the 5 cuts. So, Andrew, why don't you go first to give me the first guy you think gets the axe?
So I think when you're talking about the Colts tight end group, is where I'm gonna start. They've got a lot of tight ends, and really in my final roster prediction, I only have 3 of those guys making it. So I think a guy that they just signed, Graham Adamitis, he's a guy that's going to get cut. I think because the Colts have shown that there's other tight ends even behind the top 3 that have shown out, especially Farrod Green. I think he's been a top target of Sam Ehlinger, but I think he is a target or one of the guys that I don't see making it past this original cut of 5.
Yeah, that's honestly where I went as well. I've got a couple from that position that I think get the boot. So obviously Adamitis is my first cut. My second cut is a former Hard Knocks darling, Andrew Vollert, who had some choice words for then Chargers head coach Anthony Lynn. I think he gets the boot as well here in this cut down. Andrew, who are you kind of eyeing as that second cut?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Vollert as well. I mean, the tight end group for the Colts right now just has a lot of bodies on it, and that's where you can make these easy cuts because there are guys that aren't going to make the roster, and there are guys that are on the fringe. And these guys we know they're not going to make the roster. Probably for my third cut, I'm going to go with the linebacker Curtis Bolton. He was recently signed to the Colts. But again, the linebacker group for the Colts is pretty much set. I think I got 6 or 7 guys that are right there that are going to make the roster. And Curtis Bolton, I think he misses the cut.
I actually went linebacker, but I cut Malik Jefferson. I just think that obviously I think they like something in Bolton. Jefferson, I don't think he makes the roster. And I think from the Colts perspective, you want to elevate him. You want to elevate Bolton ahead of Jefferson and see what you have in Bolton in the preseason. So my third cut would be Jefferson. My fourth cut, I'm cutting Zach's favorite position. I'm cutting Eddie Pinheiro. I'm cutting the kicker, Eddie Pinheiro. We know who the kicker is at this point. So use that roster spot to see what else you have across the board. Pinheiro can find a job elsewhere at this rate. I'm giving him the boot. Who is your fourth cut?
My fourth cut's going to be Nick Nelson, a defensive back who really, I mean, again, we're right now we're kind of going through those spots where we know who the core guys are. And I think Nick Nelson, whether he plays safety or corner, he's got quite a few guys ahead of him currently. So I think he will be one of those 5 guys that are cut. And then for my 5th one, this one was tough for me. I think that the Colts will keep Pinheiro throughout the preseason, just to kind of make sure Hot Rod stays on top of his game. But Chris Williams, the defensive tackle, I think that of the guys, I mean, we saw a lot of good defensive lineman performances, and Chris Williams wasn't one of them. So I think he's pretty expendable. You want to see guys like Andrew Brown get more snaps, guys like Isaac Rochelle get in there. So Joey Ivy as well. So I think he would be the 5th cut that I would make. So
run down your 5, because my 5th was Nick Nelson. So just for viewers, run down your 5. You had
So mine was Adamitis, Volert, Nick Nelson. Then I went Curtis Bolton, and then we're gonna go with let's see,
Chris Williams.
Chris Williams. That's right.
So the only changes I had, I cut Malik Jefferson instead of Curtis Bolton, and then I cut Eddie Pinheiro instead of Chris Williams. So I don't think it's going to be any earth-shattering moves from the Colts. Back end of the 90-man roster guys that I think can try and catch on elsewhere later in the summer, or try and play in a lower level league like a Canadian Football League or the XFL if that's even around, or the Arena Football League. There will be some transactions coming, and then myself, Andrew, Jake, and Zach will all have full 53-man predictions here in the next few days, and then we will have all the coverage in the world possible leading up to the next preseason game, which I believe is Saturday in Detroit at Ford Field.
In Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yep, okay. There you go.
Why did I say Detroit? But, so in Minnesota against the Vikings. So Ellinger will start, and Eason will get the second half. It'll be interesting to see how Ellinger performs with the quote-unquote ones. But, lots to like coming out of that game, Andrew. I'm sure we're going to have a lot coming readers' way here on the site moving forward the rest of the week from that game, and then previewing Saturday's game. So great job tonight, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It was fun to come on and talk some more football. Like I said, it's fun to talk about actual football now. Yeah. And now we're starting to see all the talk about these young quarterbacks. Now it's time to see them start building their performances there. Offensive line, wide receiver, really every position on this Colts team still has intriguing storylines following it. So definitely follow along with us here as we talk about training camp in the next few days, and then especially on Saturday when the Colts head on up to Minnesota.
Yep. So you can read Andrew's work and my work, as well as Jake and Zach's, on Sports Illustrated at Horseshoe Huddle. You can follow us on Twitter at SI_Colts and at Colt Maven. You can follow Andrew on Twitter at Andrew Moore SI right there. And you can follow me on Twitter at by Josh Carney, again, right there underneath my face. Please follow, rate, review the Horseshoe Guys podcast anywhere you get your podcast, preferably on Apple Podcast. That's just me. I'm an Apple product guy, but anywhere you get your podcast, please follow, rate, review, subscribe to us on YouTube, on our YouTube page, and just thank you all for the support so far. We are super excited for the start of the 2021 season. As soon as we are done with these preseason games. But that will do it for tonight here this Monday night. Again, Andrew, thank you so much. To all that watched and interacted, thank you as well. And we will catch you next time.